don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I had this image in my head of what being a very spiritual person would look like. Now, a lot of that was colored by growing up in the Catholic Church. So when I thought about people who were highly spiritual, I thought about some of my favorite saints, like St. Francis or St. Teresa of the Roses. And I thought about how they were very spiritual people. And so I thought, well, that's how it must be. And I also even thought of nuns that I knew growing up or priests that, I thought were good people. And I thought, well, that's how spiritual must look like. But as I got older, I realized that that was a very narrow image of spirituality, and that I also didn't really know who those people were. I also grew up really admiring Mother Teresa, the nun who actually helped the poor in India. And she was a remarkable person who was very selfless in her devotion to, doing what she believed was the work of God. And was she a perfect person? No. But that was my image of somebody who was extremely spiritual. And so as I, started on my own spiritual path and I started having progress in certain ways, and especially during the period of what I call my spiritual awakening in 2014, I expected that I would become a better person. That's how I thought of it. I'll be a better person when I am more spiritual. Well, the reality of it is that, yes, I mean, the answer to that is, am I going to be a better person if I'm more spiritual? Well, yes and no. And by that, I mean, it depends. It depends on the day. It depends on where you're at in your spiritual journey. And there's no clear cut way to know what kind of person you're going to be as you follow that path. So today I'm going to talk about four misconceptions in particular, that people have about spiritual people. They think that these particular areas must be a certain way for people who are highly spiritual. So the first of these, and I have to kind of smile at this because it reminds me of a lot of the memes that are online about it and jokes that are told about it, that, oh, people that say I'm spiritual but not religious, that's just a cop out, or that's just, it's just following a different kind of religion. Okay, so there's a lot of like disparagement made about that and jokes made about it and all sorts of things. Well, the thing is that if you are a highly spiritual person, you may be religious or you may not be religious. And by saying not religious, I mean not following a prescribed religion. In other words, you don't belong to a specific religion that you think is the one really great religion, okay? You can do that. My godmother, who was a wonderful person actually, was a very religious Catholic. She was also one of the best people I've ever known. She was a wonderful person, and she lived her life according to the precepts of Jesus Christ. That's what she did. And I wish more people did what she did. I really do. But unfortunately, I think the majority of people don't follow that. And so being religious is no guarantee of being spiritual. And if you're spiritual, it doesn't mean you really follow a particular religion. So I think that's the first misconception. The second misconception is that if you're spiritual, you must be a really positive person. In other words, you must think optimistically about everything. No, it's not true. I would say that there are probably some highly spiritual people that are naturally optimistic, and maybe that is how they live. But the most of the people I've known that follow a spiritual path are not particularly optimistic or pessimistic. I would say they're more realistic. In other words, they are up sometimes and they're down sometimes, and they look at things in a positive light sometimes and other times in a negative light. And most of the time, they're just looking at things realistically. There's no guarantee you're going to be positive if you're spiritual. It just means that you're trying to find the truth for you. That's really what it means. What is the truth that you're trying to find in a spiritual context? So that does not mean that you're always going to look on the bright side of things, which I am reminded of that movie, The Life of Brian, which is hysterical, by the way. Monty Python. If you've never seen it, you got to see it. Anyway, there's a song in it called Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, and it's funny. Okay. So the third thing is that spiritual people are not always happy. Wow, that is the truth. Sometimes you are incredibly happy. If you've watched the first video on my channel here, I talked about a day that I had an incredible glimpse of the world in a different way. And I mean, I was happy. There's no question. And there have been various other times on my spiritual journey I've been incredibly happy. But there's a lot of times that I have been kind of miserable too. And there have been times I'm somewhere in between. I would not say that being on a spiritual path is a guarantee of happiness. In fact, I would say it probably skews more to the unhappiness side at times. Because when you're in the spiritual desert, I call it, where you're not feeling much of anything, it can be pretty discouraging. At best, it's discouraging. So a spiritual path is no guarantee of happiness. The last thing that I'll talk about, the fourth thing, is that being spiritual does not necessarily mean you're going to love everyone. Now, this was a tough one for me to recognize the reality of, because I wanted to believe that if I became more spiritual, I would naturally love my neighbor, love strangers, love anyone I saw. Like I did that one day that I talked about in that first video. I'll link that at the end of this video, by the way. I really thought that's how it would be. And I was shocked and surprised to realize no, sometimes you're going to feel like that. And let's put it this way, when you are on a spiritual path, theoretically, you love everyone. In other words, somebody say to me, oh, do you love humanity? I would say yes, absolutely. We're all in this boat together. We're all on our own paths, striving for the same things in this world. Do I love everyone? Yes, theoretically. But in reality, on a day-to-day basis, I struggle with that. I do. I struggle with that. Except for days like the one I described in that first video, I have hard time loving everyone or even most people. It is difficult. It is challenging because one of the things that starts to happen as you confront your own ego during the awakening process is that you start projecting onto other people the stuff that you're struggling with inside yourself. Let me say that again. You start projecting onto other people about the things you're struggling with inside yourself. So it is really hard sometimes to even deal with other people because we can develop an intense dislike for them based on those projections that are part of the process. Losing our own ego in the spiritual journey is necessary. That's part of what you have to do. And in doing that, we start projecting that onto other people, and we get triggered by other people because of it. And so that is difficult. That is challenging. So no, short answer, you don't love everyone all the time. I'm hoping by the time I maybe get to the end of this journey, before I actually end, this particular life, I hope that I might feel more that way, but I don't know that I will or won't. All I can do is keep trying to follow what my spirit tells me, what my intuition tells me to do, to keep meditating on a daily basis, to keep focused on spiritual practices, and then hope for the best. Hope that I start feeling more love on a specific basis towards other people. Believe me, I wish for that all the time because I don't like getting triggered by people. I don't like getting irritated by people. It is tough, and I'm sure those of you who are watching this can identify with this. Most people have a similar problem. They do. So those are some of the misconceptions that I have found along the way, along the journey of spirituality, that people somehow think that if you're so spiritual, you must, do these things. No, not necessarily, or at least not consistently. I've had glimmers of that. I've had amazing happiness at times. I've had amazing positivity. I've had amazing love for my fellow humans. I mean, it's been there at times. It just doesn't sustain. So I just keep working on it. And I feel like I don't really have a choice. You know, once you've been awakened, once you're on a path of spirituality, you really don't have a choice. You have to keep following that path through the deserts, through the lean times, through the times that you think, why am I doing this? There really isn't an option. There really isn't a choice at that point. Once you get past a certain point in your spiritual journey, you can't really go back. You cannot retrace your steps. So, hopefully that's helped you today if you've struggled with some of those misconceptions. And until next time, be kind to yourself and to others, and take care. Bye.